that car because they're at, they both go to the same place.
Same location, yeah.
So, like,
Okay, welcome everyone.
go to the gas station and show her again.
It is, welcome to our February 4th, 2025 Spokane County Board of Commissioners meeting. It is 9 o'clock, our board briefing session. Let the record reflect that we have 4 commissioners here. Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner French, Commissioner Walton, and myself. And we will go ahead and get started. So welcome, Mike Burgess.
Hello, commissioners. Hope you're doing well. Excuse the way I sound. I got hit pretty hard with the flu or something last week, and so I'm almost back to peak physical performance, but still dragging quite a bit, honestly. So just some quicker updates today with one new item. That's an item that's on your legislative agenda. So I think your position would support that. But yet just mostly updates on things that we've already talked about, and then would be happy to hear from you if you have any suggested items you'd like to discuss. We are just in the beginning of our 4th week, so we're through 3 weeks of 15. Next big day would be the 21st, which is the policy committee cutoff. So a number of the bills that we're talking about today will have to have been voted from committee, though some of them have already started to move through the process. So I will just start running through the list and then interrupt me, I think, if you have any questions, and I'll just get going. The freight rail infrastructure bill, we talked about that last week. It had its hearing and it's waiting on a committee vote, the House version 1058. 1218 is that competency evaluation bill that was a Governor Inslee request. Did get that hearing early on the 15th of January, but nothing has been scheduled since. And I have not heard any rumblings that that bill was going to move. So that's a good thing. That bill had some pretty negative impacts on the county, policy-wise and financially too. The 911 bill had its hearing last week. Pretty contentious hearing, as you can imagine. I know there was some news coverage after it that I'd read in the Spokesman. Nothing has been scheduled on the bill at this moment, but I'm working together with my colleague that represents the broader 911 community that has some concerns with the bill. And though it is narrowly drafted to Spokane County, there is the concern of kind of, the precedent you're setting and the implications of what this could have statewide. I think if you had watched the hearing, your takeaway would be it's pretty clear this is a Spokane issue that has made its way to the legislature, something that we've talked about over the last 3 weeks. It's not a good look, but it is what it is at this point. And so we'll continue to work on that bill and see what happens. I have heard indications that the bill will likely move from committee, but we'll see. We'll have to see if that bears out. The next one, the law enforcement hiring grants bill, that has a hearing on the 5th. House Bill 1700 next on the list. That's the comp plan updates bill that's similar to the one at the bottom, 5558. Representative Voles introduced that bill 1700 for us, but it has not had a hearing scheduled. And given that we're getting closer to that cutoff, I think it's likely that the Senate bill is the one that continues to move. When a lot of times when committee chairs see a bill that does something similar moving, they let the opposite body move their bill first, as opposed to taking up their own committee time. Having said that, though, we'll watch to see if it is scheduled for a hearing between now and that cutoff on the 21st. 1786, that's one that's new to the list. That is the bill that reflects the legislative priority dealing with lift projects. It focuses them on public safety. It's pretty self-explanatory from the title. I should have given you the bill link, but the reality is it really just adds the word public safety facility in the statute. So I would assume that's a bill that you all would want to support based on the fact that it was on your legislative agenda. If you have any comments there that you'd like to make, but nothing has been scheduled yet.
So, Mike, that's
a bill that I worked with Maceo on in terms of changing the TIF standards that would specifically allow for either police substations, police precinct, or fire stations to be included as allowable projects in TIF financing efforts.
So yeah, like I said, it's been introduced. We'll work to try to get it a hearing. I will tell you that I've had a lot of folks asking me about that bill from different parties, ports in particular. And there's just some ports that have a pretty, negative, even visceral reaction to TIF. They just don't like them. Others do. So there could be some opposition, and there's even some folks in the public safety community that don't like it. And I know Commissioner French, you had talked to some of those public safety groups. So if we do get the bill scheduled for a hearing, I'd love to develop that more and build the kind of a coalition around folks that would support the bill. But just wanted to give you some reality of things I've already heard from colleagues that had heard the bill was coming and had kind of expressed some concerns about it with me.
I will circle back with the Fire Commissioners Association. They'd indicated that they were going to weigh in support of the bill because it would provide a venue for them to build fire stations without having to pass a special levy to do so.
Yep. Commissioners, is this something?
Oh,
again, sorry, Commissioner.
Hi, Mike. I was just gonna weigh in and say, what I'm trying to understand what the opposition to another tool in the toolbox would be. It doesn't mean it's gonna generate enough revenue always, a TIF, to be able to do everything, but it could generate enough revenue that you could match it with other, other types of funding to make a project. So I guess, what would be the ports? Is there something with the port specific, like they fear it would take money from other port projects?
So, Commissioner, I don't want to say it's all ports. It's
Okay.
some versus others. And I think over time, excuse me, let's see. I think that there's depending on where you are and depending on where these TIF projects have happened, maybe a given port would think that somehow they had lost out on revenue that they were entitled to because there was a project maybe in their taxing area. It does. I mean, I just bluntly put, it doesn't always make a lot of sense to me that what that opposition is. On the public safety side, there had been opposition over the years. Again, depending on where it was in the state, that somehow that a given, say, fire district was losing or had the perception that they were losing out on revenue that they would have been otherwise entitled to because the revenue went to the TIF project instead of to the fire district. So I guess I can't give you, a concrete example. It's kind of a hodgepodge and they're kind of all over the place. But I mean, you make a good point. You think it would just be another tool in the toolbox, but that doesn't always work that way over here.
So the way TIFs work, the jurisdiction has to either approve or reject being included in the TIF calculation. So school districts, fire districts, and library districts are all specifically given the option to be excluded from a TIF funding boundary. So it's I understand that the port district is a different taxing authority, but they can raise property taxes ad nauseum, and they don't even have to go out to a public vote. They can just, by an action of their port district commissioners, raise property taxes. So I don't understand, or maybe they don't understand TIF's work with regard to their taxing authority. And I don't know of any port district that's levying a tax of 15 cents when the authority is 48.5 cents. So none of them are anywhere close to their full taxing authority.
I think that, Commissioners, too, there's a component of turf to this. There's turf issues over here all the time. I think that's a part of it. But again, I don't think there's ever been that I've heard kind of a blanket
Yeah.
criticism of them. You know, there are certain legislators that just don't like TIF projects for whatever reason. So I'll tell you what, I'll try to gather some more now that the bill's been introduced. And like I said, I was down last week, so I wasn't really talking to colleagues about it, but I'll mingle with them this week and the ones I know that have had opposition and try to get you something more concrete to bring back to you in terms of what the specific opposition could be. But is this a bill that you'd like to move that I'd move into the support column? Because again, I think it fits with your adopted agenda from back in, November, December.
Yep.
Okay, hearing otherwise, I'll just move that over to support there, and then work towards trying to get it a hearing. The next bill on the list is another one of the law enforcement bills. That's the Holy Bill. Had a hearing yesterday in Ways and Means. That's good. The next one, the county auditor issue. Nothing has happened since the public hearing. Nothing has happened publicly. People and staff from the association that represents the auditors and the Association of Counties are working on and trying to exchange some language on that. And I have checked in with those folks about the bill and will continue to do so. The next one, 5404, Public Defense Services, the House version, which I don't have on the list. I just oversight on my part. The House version is 1592. I'll add it to the list, but that bill has a hearing today. And then the last one was the growth management comp plan, kind of the timeline extension bill. Had its hearing yesterday. Commissioner French, thank you for testifying. And Scott Chesney also weighed in and was joined by a number of other jurisdictions around the state, including council member Dillon with the city of Spokane testified in favor of the bill too. So we're in agreement on that bill. How about that? So, that's kind of the list as I wanted to run through today. Like I said, didn't have a lot of new items, but happy to respond to any questions that you might have. You might have a couple items that you've heard about that I just had an oversight, but not have it on the list.
Like a bill that's been introduced is 5382. And this is a measure to alter the petition process for giving voters the initiative to petition. And so you might look at that bill and give us your wisdom in terms of whether that I'm hearing there's a growing sense of opposition to it because it limits the citizens' right to the initiative process. But to be honest, I haven't read through the entire bill myself, so be interested in your input.
I'm aware of the bill, Commissioner. Probably saw some of the covers that you did, but have not dug into the issues. But I can do that.
Okay.
I have two that I was hoping to add to our list. One is Senate Bill 5635. This is a Senator Christian bill. This is has to do with on-site sewage mechanism systems for small parcels. That this is something that I Public Works and myself and the Health District had a meeting last year about this. It would allow for small parcels on bodies of water that can't fit your traditional septic system because the parcels are too small. You can't have a drainage field. So this would allow for folks to have these on-site sewage systems, which don't fall under the classic definition of a septic system. So the health district can't permit them. And so this sort of cleans it up and makes it easier for folks to install these systems and in turn improve the quality of the water that they're on as well.
Ecology wants to fund them.
Oh, I guess Ecology wants to fund them too, but again, they run into the hassle if you can't get them permitted because they don't fit classic definition of a septic system. But here locally, there are two that were allowed on a pilot, just as a pilot to be installed on Newman Lake. From everything we can tell, they're working well, but not really able to expand the usage of those, of that technology. And that.
Yeah, I see there,
that.
oh, excuse me, Commissioner. I see that the bill was introduced, but hasn't been, nothing's been scheduled, but that makes sense because it was only
Correct.
introduced yesterday. I saw that on the list. So I'm glad you brought it to my attention.
Yep.
I saw it on like I said, I saw it on the intro list yesterday. So.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's one more bill that I was hoping to add our support behind. This one, I think should be non-controversial if it can get a hearing. It's House Bill 1761.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Bull Schmidt Chase bill. And essentially this currently for county commissioners, city council, school boards, following an election and certification, the individual can be sworn in at the final legislative meeting of the year or the final 10 days of the year. This would just change it to at the final meeting of the year or anytime after that before January 1st. So it's
Okay.
like I'll give an example. I think our last meeting was mid-December. And then so Commissioner French and I did a joint swearing in ceremony. We were hoping to have it the prior week to where we could, but we were essentially limited to the final 10 days of December. So it created essentially a week gap in the middle there where you couldn't be sworn in. So then we were fighting up against holidays and the Christmas, New Year's and all that. Just thought this was kind of a cleanup bill. So it doesn't kind of create a gap into when members can be sworn in to any of those
Okay.
bodies, whether it be commissions, city councils, school boards and whatnot. So,
Okay. I'll check in on it. Thank you.
okay. Yep. And that was just introduced on Friday. So
Yeah.
just,
And then Mike, probably when I'm over, I want to try to schedule a meeting with Warren Davis, Representative Davis.
Okay.
We could do that. So she has me scheduled to, I'm going to be on a funding call. That she's got a Zoom meeting tonight at 7 for the 23-hour crisis centers.
So, I'm sorry, Commissioner. So you're on a call with her tonight about this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah.
She's got a group of people, so.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she had it set up for 7 o'clock tonight to want to talk about funding for the 23-hour crisis centers
Okay.
for issues that she's passionate about. So, and I knew her through the Rodell group. So
Sure. I remember that. Okay. Yeah. If you want to give me, shoot me a text or just get in touch and let me know how it went, that'd be great.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
And then
Perfect.
I'm seeing if I can have Justin join in as well tonight. So.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay. That's it on my end.
We
So
have the legislative one pagers for you guys to look at
Okay,
sometime, if that's okay.
yeah, I think.
We're having schedule.
45. Yeah.
Sure, you can come join us. So you guys, am
Are
I
you
saying the
okay
name
to-
right, Sharissa?
Are you okay to
Okay.
stay on while we one pager?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, what's that?
But Jeff wants to talk about the one pager for the legislative when we go over next week.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
They're in your inbox, Mike.
Okay. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet, but I'll look.
You've had them for like 21 minutes.
Has everyone met, have the commissioners met Sharissa yet? Who? Sharissa? Yeah, everyone knows. Okay, great.
So Pat and Sharissa did all of this, for which I'm extremely grateful. You'll see some are duplicate, but if you look close, one's a federal version and one's a state version. If you look at the column, right? And so you'll see where it says state request and the following one will say federal request. You guys had requested 3 of them, so a CSRSC. We only have a state version of that since it's already in the federal queue if a 25 budget is passed by Congress. But then the plants, ferry, and the PFAS are written as both an option for state and or federal. You guys have electronic versions of these as of about 25 minutes ago also. So wanted any feedback, thoughts? Are these the right and only ones you're looking for? And then we need a discussion on who are the legislators that are the right person for each ask? Are we doing all three asks? Are we gonna prioritize one? And then not only who is the legislator, but who is the right person to make the initial outreach?
This is where you want feedback.
That's why the awkward silence, yes.
So I would offer up. Madam Chair, that's all right. I would offer up that on the PFAS filtration systems, that would be either Volts or Graham and Holy, because all three of them represent the West Plains. And so and then the TIF reform would be Volts.
Your money ask with that, or is that just the language ask of the goal?
That's just language.
So that's taken care of, right? He's already pushing it.
Yeah. So you want, are you looking for the fiscal or just?
I'm looking
all
on
of
the
it?
fiscal side,
Oh, okay, then.
or anything that hasn't been done that needs to be.
So then, Bellevue, Water District is Richelli and Volts.
I would think Plants Ferry, since in the fourth, or Suzanne, and then you said you had some good conversations with Burchelli.
Yeah, Richelli seemed to be very up on, so I would do it too.
He's usually those youth sports.
Yeah.
Advocate.
I think those would be the two, Senate and House there,
Yeah,
Suzanne and Vargas.
then the Bellevue would be Richelli and Volts.
Have you talked with them on that yet?
Yes.
Is it in process?
Um,
Not the fiscal side?
I don't know. I know that both of them are pushing it, so. Richelli from the Senate, Volts from the House, but the status of that, I don't know.
Pat, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, one thing that's needed on these, you may all recall, and I know Mike is aware, as is Jeff, we need to work with the member to submit the capital budget request form, which is like 19 questions long. But once we get that submitted, that will officially put in the request, I think, with their committee. Start talking with the respective capital budget chairs. Some of those requests that are like $1.5 million, I'm thinking of Plants Ferry. That may be interesting at Mike's perspective. That may require 4 members, 2 from each chamber because of the dollar amount. Feels like the average member could get about $750,000 for their district.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Pat, to just jump in there, but yeah, I think you'd still submit it under one legislator. So, and which one is going to be the lead? So, yeah, we need to do that outreach to do that. And then because the crisis center's on there too, correct? Or did we already closed?
It's that one, yeah.
Okay, sorry, jumping ahead, but yeah, I mean, from a course of action, we just need so if you're gonna have a third district legislator do it, for instance, say the project's in the third, you'd get one of the 3 to submit it. And then between the 3 of them, they kind of work out what their priorities are and they get together as a group and divvy up their list. But we just need to find one of the 3 in a given district to be the lead on it. And you put that in the paperwork, as Pat mentioned. But Pat, I think we're okay to just keep it as one legislator. But you're right. You start getting into the $1.5 million, that is a bigger request. These community projects are normally around $1 million, but that's kind of a guideline, really, not really a rule, but.
Perfect.
So for Plants Ferry with Schmidt and Richelli, do any of you want to make those initial outreaches? Be looking forward at the staff level.
I can call Suzanne.
Your district.
You said you've already broached the subject.
I've already had the conversation with Richelli, but I can circle back with him again.
I'll call Suzanne.
Would you rather circle back with him, Amber?
Well, I mean, I can, but
doesn't matter to me. I mean, either way, I'm happy to if you don't want to.
Well, why don't I do that and then
Okay.
we may need him on something else too.
Well, the other one is the Bellevue Water
Right.
District. That's
So you-
that's Volts and Richelli.
You want to
Okay.
reach out on Bellevue?
Sure.
You want
Yes.
Sherry?
Let's do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
And then for PFAS, we have Old Grand Poli. Have you reached out? Do you want to reach out again? Do you want?
I've had conversation with both of them. And so both of them are agreeable, but I haven't submitted anything to him yet, other than the dollar amount.
Okay.
Now, hey, Mike, on
Yes.
the other opportunity on the filtration for West Plains is if the legislature has heartache with funding, doing a direct funding allocation for that, the state health department has also submitted a request for filtration, replenishing their state filtration budget.
Okay.
And I'm wondering whether an amendment to that request for the filtration for the West Plains might also be another avenue to try and get those filters funded.
Yeah, I think it could be. Was that request coordinated through your local department? Is that what you said?
No, the health department request is a request coming directly from the state health board.
Okay, I hadn't heard of that. So obviously you have from somewhere. So
Yeah, I heard it week before last that they were making the request when it was mentioned at LSC.
oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be worth maybe someone from the Spokane County Board of Health could reach out and coordinate that with them.
Yeah. That's on me.
Okay.
No, either one. Chair and vice chair or past chair.
It sounds like that might be an opportunity for proviso language.
Yeah.
Amber, are you interested in doing that, or Josh from the health board side?
Sorry, I was reading through the details here. What,
Okay.
remind me what you did
Mike.
say.
Mike, would you re-ask your question?
Well, I just think it'd be worth maybe having, because it's a state Department of Health request, that maybe it'd be worth having your local, somebody from the local health board or health district, I don't know if I'm saying that properly, reach out to see if we can't kind of dovetail on that ask that Commissioner French mentioned.
And you as chair, it's like that's coming from you.
So have we framed this as the funding would come through DOH?
So right now, what I heard week before last with LSC is that the health board, state health board, is making a funding request for the legislature to replenish the funding
Right.
for PFAS filtration systems. And it was suggested that making a request for the filtration for the West Plains as an amendment to that legislation might be an easier lift
Right.
than having a bill directly to the West Plains. So I'm just trying two avenues, one bill that would be direct, the other one would be an amendment to a bigger bill from the state health board. And because it's from the state health board, it might get more traction.
So do we have a number on that bill?
No, it's a funding request, it's capital request and stuff, so I'll be over there tomorrow and Thursday, I would try and get you more information on it.
So trying to come at it from two different angles.
Yes,
I like that. Yeah.
yep,
And because replenishing that fund might be an easier lift.
might be an easier lift and something that's already in the legislature's wheelhouse as opposed to a separate request that's unique.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. So
Okay.
once you get more info on
Okay,
that request, then we can. Would we need to ask them to put more dollars into it than what
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yep.
So we need to work with them on that.
Yep.
Okay.
Pat, I see you raise your hand.
One more twist to this, commissioners, is I believe from putting this one pager together, doing the research, it looked like Department of Health or another state agency was offering assistance on the under sink filtration system. And this request is for the wellhead POET system, point of entry. So there might be just a twist in terms of the language there, trying to get some expansion in the use of the funds, as well as the dollar amount. I believe Commissioner French probably knows this better, but the under sink program is X amount of dollars. The wellhead is a factor higher than that.
Right, and you're right, the Department of Health is looking to replenish the filtration system that's under the sink, but doing an amendment to also include the POET systems might be considered an easier lift than a separate capital request for just the POET system. So that's the suggestion, was it's easier to add on and blow up than it is to be creative and have something totally independent.
Question for the board on the crisis relief center. We've talked about again, knowing that we don't know what the capital construction costs are going to be yet until the progressive design build team goes through the validation. We'd talked about the 5 million from opioids that the commissioners have already committed, and then earmarking 10 out of mental health, so 15. And then if we're successful with the federal ask, that 10 can come down. And if we're successful with the 3 ask from the state, that can come down even further. So are you comfortable with that approach? If so, then we should revise this a little bit to say, because right now it's 3, 7, and 3. I would recommend that we put the county up to 9, which gets us to our 15 to make sure it's kind of a consistent number. And I would also suggest, rather than expected, maybe we just say federal funds request. Is that kind of matching our next the federal slide, because it is still a request.
I'm okay with that. I mean, like I said, I've got this call tonight, so we're going to
Then same on the.
That's one of them. And then we still haven't discussed the who, as far as the person to take the lead on the capital request for SRS.
That's not a capital. That's an opioid.
It's opioid, but I think we're still gonna have to go through the same.
Oh, that's right.
process.
That's right. You said that. Yeah.
Do we, Madam Chair, do we have any, I know we talked about maybe 3 weeks ago, investigating the state's opioid funds and whether or not, how those are being spent and whether those could be allocated. And I'm sorry if we got an update from Mike on that and I missed it, but wondering if that's still an option to help guide legislators towards a potential source of funds.
It's still the.
That's our plan.
Okay.
I think we're still gonna need the champion, just like we before the capital request, the champion legislator to push. Probably be a requirement of the agency to do this from the legislature. My assumption on the
Right,
process.
Yeah, commissioners, I think we'd submit the request, but as you're here, next week, maybe planting the seed, or some of you the week after, planting the seed with some of those legislators that, hey, this is an option for that funding, or could be an option.
It feels like a natural Richelli fit, but we already have his name down a couple times. I don't know how many requests are realistic from the same person.
Well,
let me see how this call goes tonight. Because I don't know what Representative Davis is trying to do. I know she's looked at Spokane as a pilot in other areas of treatment. So let me see. She might even. Again, if we can get it out of the opioid dollar, it's not a capital from the capital funds. It would be a request. I'm hoping out of the opioid funding, but that's what I'll learn more tonight.
Can you let us know then tomorrow? So our timeline is these are due on the 21st. The board doesn't meet next week because of the flying in Olympia. So the following meeting will be 72 hours before the forms are due. It also requires outreach to groups for letters of support, depending who the requester is. We try to pick appropriate letters of support from groups that would have a bit more sway with that person, so to speak. And so we don't, so not meeting next week. And we just get letters of support from whoever.
I will.
We are kind of down to, this is our second to last meeting. The last meeting is really close to the deadline.
I will not know till like after 8 o'clock tonight, so I will let you know as soon as I can.
Yeah, I mean,
He will talk to you tomorrow.
I shut off my phone when I go to bed, so call anytime.
but if I'm contacting Senator Riccelli about the plant spirit, I'd be happy to mention it. Maybe he would have ideas of who would be best. So just Jeff, just let me know if
Perfect.
I could brainstorm with him as well.
And then if you find any typos or have thoughts on other things
I
to
do.
change, I'm going back to Sharissa, myself, or Pat, and we'll get those. If you get them to us like in the next day or so, we can have them all turned and ready before you take off next week, so you can make copies to pass out while you're there if you want.
And can we get the forms for the capital request?
I made a note, I'll send that around to all of you. We're good on this one right now.
Okay, just a second. Pat still has a.
I was just gonna follow up while that issue was hot. I think it's great if you can plan to get that outreach done this week, those calls in advance of the trip next week, and then we can be confirming. I'll be with you next week and can make some notes as I'm with you, as Mike is as well in some of those meetings. But just a tip, I always, when I'm talking to the legislators, I remember ABC, which is just always be selling. And if they're interested and hot, that's great. If they're kind of lukewarm, you know, who are three other members they recommend that you can reach out to either build support for it, or if they don't want to be the champion, who do they think is the next best opportunity? I think they'll have some good insights for it.
ABC stands for what?
That's what you're saying. Selling is ABS.
Always keep selling.
Always
Selling.
be
Selling.
closing.
With the
Closing.
It should be closing.
Always be closing.
Yeah.
How do you get selling out of
Let's
that?
go to the cell of science, CELL.
That's the county. Why we proofread anything.
It does, yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I'll be back in an hour with John Colton for the federal side.
Awesome. Are you good, Mike? Okay.
I am. So you will be here next week, but we won't do this call next Tuesday, correct?
Correct. No, we'll be in Olympia.
Now text.
All right, perfect. I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Highlighting
Pat, one more
sustainability.
question?
Yep, I was just going to make the comment. If there is any feedback on the one pagers, you have them electronically. Feel free to get that to Sharissa and I by Thursday. We'll make updates, and then I'll bring hard copies of this for as many member meetings as we have planned next week. Have some nice packets for you to leave as leave behinds with the members we're meeting with.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Hey, that's gonna take us to Kevin Ritchie, Under Sheriff.
No, you're good. Good morning. I have a whole bunch of stuff. So the first thing that I would like to, I got it right here. That would brief on is the our civil fees, or like mileage, all this, sorry, our civil process costs, the fees and everything. It hasn't been updated since 2011, and obviously like the mileage per mile kind of stuff has changed since then. And so I kind of did a little breakdown of the changes. Most of if anything has changed, they've gone up by like $10. The most significant change would be the mileage per mile has gone from 55.5 cents to 70 cents a mile, which corresponds with the normal mileage rate. I know this has been through legal. Heather Martinez has been working on this for about 6 months, so it's been through legal several times. One of the big notable changes is currently right now we process refunds, and so if someone comes in and submits a fee, like to have us go out and serve civil paperwork or legal paperwork, And we're not able to, there's a refund process and we want to go away from that because we process hundreds of refunds and it's very time consuming and some of the refunds are for like 50 cents, you know, they're very minimal amounts. So we'd like to move to a non-refundable, non-negotiable, which is the same as other counties are doing. If you'd like, I can go over the changes or line by line. There's quite a few of them, but like I said, the most significant ones are the mileage and the other ones are about $10 to $5. And some of them didn't change at all. Any questions on that one? Okay. The next one is an MOU with Public Works, and this is to put some of our flock and surveillance cameras on county-owned property. So county right of ways and stuff, and then also this is authorization to enter into an MOU with Avista to temporarily attach some cameras to their property to enter into an agreement to attach cameras to their property.
Vista, you said.
Yeah, to Avista, yeah. And I assume this has been through legal. Justin I think he was unavoidably detained today, so he can be here to talk more in depth about this if necessary, but this is basically an agreement to use our own property to put cameras on, so.
I don't think I've reviewed this one, so I can't
Okay, this is
confirm or deny that.
Chris Anderson.
Yeah.
This has been in the works for a while as well.
And Kyle's aware of this one. This is pole attachment signals,
Yes.
signage, that sort of thing for the cameras, just have the connection with Public Works on it.
Yeah, and we've met with the flock team and we're working closely with them in locations that they want to make sure there's no interference with our signal operations or anything along those lines, and just making sure that it's mutually beneficial.
Thank you. Any further about help?
Kyle mentioned the flock, so
Yes.
it's in any other cameras, or is it just the flock? And the flock are the license plate?
Yeah, those are the
Right.
license plate readers and the I think they have another version of it, but I think currently we're just using license plate readers. The third item is the city of Spokane Valley requested an amendment to their contract, and essentially the amendment is they want to add 10 new positions. And I think you guys all have a letter. It's just a request from Mr. Holman just to add 10 positions and further, I think, evaluate their position needs and support recruiting. It looked pretty basic or benign. I think we've already actually had the positions by number in there anyway.
Okay.
Any questions, or I'm not sure why that was being briefed. Honestly. All right.
Because the indemnification.
Oh, that's right, indemnification. You're right. Absolutely.
And then you had a stop, right?
Yes, this is just the acceptance of the $10,750 for the annual STOP grant that we get. That's the End Violence Against Women. We use the money for training domestic violence and sexual assault units, and that's pretty much it. And it's kind of an annual award. It goes up and down. It looks like it's up about $1,000 this year. That's it.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Pretty easy. Okay, that's gonna take us to Dr. Zane. I see you're on camera or on the Zoom.
Yes. Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I was trying to think of a catchy thing like ABC, but I didn't come up with one fast enough. Thanks for letting me join you this morning. There's been a surge of interest this month from the media and citizen groups in the community regarding overdose trends and numbers from 2024. So I just wanted to pop in and give you guys an overview of what questions are circulating in the community and what happened in 2024. The caveat is that this information is, we haven't finalized all our cases from 2024 yet, and we're still looking at all the data. So this is provisional information subject to change as we get our cases all done and kind of clean up our data a little bit. But I can give you, I don't think the trends will change significantly. So yeah, next slide, thank you. Just by way of background, the opioid epidemic didn't start with fentanyl. It began really in the late 1990s, and has unfolded in what's usually described as 3 waves so far. As first was prescription opioids like oxycodone and methadone, and then next there was a rise in deaths involving heroin, and then most recently this dramatic rise in deaths from synthetic opioids like fentanyl. This is statewide data. Spokane has lagged a little bit behind the country and the state in terms of the timing of these waves, but we have seen the same phenomenon basically. Early in the current wave, the market was dominated by pharmaceutically produced fentanyl, so diverted fentanyl. And now it appears that most of the overdoses nationally and statewide and here involved illicitly manufactured fentanyl. Next slide. So one question that has come up a lot is, are people in Spokane County overdosing on pharmaceutical fentanyl or illicitly manufactured fentanyl products, and how do we know? So unfortunately, my office doesn't have the budget for the expanded testing that's necessary to scientifically prove that the origin of the drugs involved in Spokane overdoses, in Spokane County overdoses in particular. But there are offices in the region that do have the capacity to do that expanded testing. And also we do take a lot of clues from the scenes in order to extrapolate to say that most or all of the fentanyl related deaths that we're seeing in our county are due to illicitly manufactured fentanyl products rather than the diverted pharmaceutical medications. And on this slide, I'm just showing you some of the clues that we look at. So we're just basically looking at drugs, drug paraphernalia, the modes of use of people who are using substances. And almost all of our accidental overdose death scenes will have items like these that are associated with illicit drug use rather than prescription medication misuse. Next slide. Also commonly asked questions are, what is a lethal amount of fentanyl? And then sort of a corollary question to that, because of the messaging that even a few grains of fentanyl can kill, whether people should worry about taking fentanyl that's prescribed to them by their doctors. And I'll start with the corollary question first. That is that people who are taking prescribed fentanyl that's purchased at an actual pharmacy and not on the street, and that they're taking as prescribed and not mixing it with alcohol or other drugs, they should not be afraid to follow their treatment plan. And that is because pharmaceutically produced products, medications that are FDA approved medications, have a lot of quality assurance and quality control processes that are followed during the production of those medications. So every pill or patch or whatever the item is has a standard dose of fentanyl in it. And all of the fillers and additives are known and they're tested for safety. So you know what you're getting with those products. And that makes the risks of taking prescribed fentanyl much lower, and they can be managed together with your doctor. But unfortunately, in the illicitly manufactured market, things aren't that straightforward, because unlike FDA approved medications, these illicitly manufactured products don't have any quality control measures or any standards for consistency across the pills or powders or whatever the product is. So that means we basically have no idea what's in these products. There are studies on the actual products themselves, and they show that all of them basically show some degree of adulteration of the product, enhancement of the product, contamination of the product, and the dose of whatever the advertised ingredient is may not be present, or the dose may vary widely. So drugs might be substituted to make the products cheaper or more potent. So there was a time when people thought they were buying oxycodone on the street, but it was actually fentanyl, or they think they're buying fentanyl, but it's actually some frankenfentanyl, so-called, or a fentanyl analog. Sometimes there are other drugs like xylazine or new benzodiazepines that are substituted for fentanyl to make the product more potent. There might be other substances like talcum powder or sugar or caffeine or Tylenol. They might be added to bulk up the product or dilute it or enhance the effects of whatever the advertised drug is. And also because of the way these are manufactured and where they're being manufactured, the product might be contaminated with bacteria or fungus or pesticides or heavy metals. So all of these additional things that are in the product have their own toxic effects in the body, and those toxic effects might cause or contribute to any given death. Next slide. So we know from, you can take your drugs and send them to certain places that will actually test the product for you and let you know what's in the drug. And so from these databases, we can see that people that are buying stimulant drugs are for the most part getting stimulant drugs, even though it might not be the stimulant drug that they are expecting. Next slide. But people who are buying a product that's advertised as fentanyl or dope really could be getting anything. So you can see in the list there that in the middle column is what people think they're getting. And in the right-hand column are all the substances detectable in that product. So while we might be able to detect a certain level of fentanyl in the product, our standard testing doesn't detect the additional substances that might be present and that can increase the risk of overdose. So for purposes of understanding what dose of an illicitly manufactured fentanyl product is, it's probably better to think of the word fentanyl as more of an umbrella term for these complex mixtures of substances. And instead of thinking, well, if there's this much fentanyl in the drug, it'll be fine. You can't really think that way because that is just a marker for maybe all these other things that are in the drug, in the product. So you can't really predict a lethal amount of illicitly manufactured fentanyl product, is basically what I'm trying to say. Next slide. And then another issue is that because, in part, because of the exposure to all of these this whole basic toxic stew of ingredients in the product, people who are using these products over the long term, unlike if they're just taking prescribed medications, are developing these chronic medical conditions like chronic heart disease, lung disease, that make them more susceptible to the active ingredients, whether it's fentanyl or xylazine or some other drug. So basically, there's an interaction between the substance and the person. And if the person is already in a weakened state, let's say, then a lower dose even of the drug will cause them to overdose, rather than in a healthy person without these diseases may be able to withstand a higher dose, maybe. Next slide. So the bottom line is, that was a long way of saying that there really is no one amount at which I can say this amount is toxic or lethal, and then under that amount is not lethal, because it's so unpredictable, as mentioned. So any level of fentanyl can be a lethal one, depending on the condition of someone's organs, their general health, what other substances are in the product. Next slide. So now some basic actual data from 2024. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the trends, basically how overdose deaths are fitting into our overall workload. The top line is all the cases that are reported to the medical examiner. That spike is during the early years of the pandemic, when there were a lot more unattended deaths at home. The middle line there is the deaths for which we have accepted jurisdiction. So for all cases reported, we do a preliminary investigation. For jurisdiction accepted cases, we do a more in-depth investigation up to scene response and autopsy. So that middle line represents those cases. And then the bottom line is all overdose cases. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see this data a different way, and you can see the top part is the overdose cases. So over time, they are eating up a larger and larger share of our overall jurisdiction accepted cases. So in 2024, overdose cases represented about 30% of our jurisdiction accepted cases versus 14% in 2019. Next slide. Another way of looking at it is overall, we've seen a 293% increase in overdose deaths since 2019. So you can see the line rising pretty sharply. In 2023, 5% of all deaths in Spokane County were due to overdoses. We're still finalizing the numbers for 2024, but the trend does continue upward, as you see. As of last Thursday, when I sent these slides in, we had signed out 346 overdose deaths for 2024. We had 301 overdose deaths in 2023. We have about, I think, 30 or 40 or so cases that are still pending from 2024. So again, these numbers may change. And then sadly, in 2025, we're on track to meet or exceed last year's cases. So as of today, we've signed out 30 overdoses for the 31 days of January. We do have about 40 cases that are still pending additional testing, and some of those will turn out to be overdoses. And then for reference, we only had 26 overdose cases in January of 2020. Next slide. The increase in overdose.
Dr. Zhang, I just want to make sure I understood that. So already in January, you've seen over 30.
Correct.
Of this year.
Of
And
this,
last
right,
year was,
so, yeah,
last year was
so we've
26.
seen already, I'm sorry.
Last January was 26, and this year you're already over 30, and you know there's potentially more.
Yes, correct. Yeah, again, so there has been a leveling off. I keep seeing articles that say nationally there's a leveling off of overdose cases. Statewide, I think that is going to be true. But again, Spokane has lagged a little bit behind. So I hope that we're going to follow that trend. But so far, it does not look like that's the case.
Thank you.
So on this next slide, you can see that our overdose deaths are largely, again, driven by fentanyl, and that is, as I talked about, the illicitly manufactured fentanyl products. Looking at just fentanyl deaths, we've seen more than a 19,000% increase from 2018 to 2023. Our fentanyl deaths are still going up. Using the latest numbers we have for 2024, fentanyl was detected in about 78% of accidental overdoses in 2024. Next slide. I do want to mention, though, that although fentanyl is kind of the face of this epidemic phase, that fentanyl isn't the only problem here. So this graph is for statewide data, but I like it because of the pretty colors and because it shows you that steep upward curve is not made up only of opioids. So red is the opioids, kind of the base of this, and that is going upward for sure. But the green, orange, and yellow segments are mixed drug overdoses. And that's something that I want to call out because next slide, we are also seeing this in Spokane County. So this is Spokane County data. The blue line is all overdoses. The orange line is the fentanyl overdoses. But you see this gray line paralleling the rise, the same rate of rise is methamphetamine deaths. And then the yellow at the bottom is cocaine. So there's a definite uptick in cocaine deaths. What we're seeing almost 70% of the time is that the methamphetamine and cocaine are detected in mixed overdoses. So the most common combination is methamphetamine and fentanyl. We have seen an increase in cocaine plus fentanyl, even sometimes just the stimulant drug, so just methamphetamine plus cocaine. Next slide. This is just some data from this is a website that is maintained by the Washington Department of Health. We submit data to this website and they turn it into pretty graphs. So I just pulled the graphs off of that website just for some demographic data. So these are current to the end of 2023, but given what we've seen in 2024, I do not think that these trends are gonna be significantly different. But as you can see, illicit drug use can occur at any age, but the bulk of those using illicit drugs in Spokane County are between the ages of 25 and 65. And we have seen an uptick in the, I don't want to say older people, but in kind of the 60 plus age range. So we're still seeing a fair bit of use in that demographic. The people using substances or fatal overdoses on these substances predominantly occurring in males. And then this last chart here, we don't always have access to this data, but from what we have so far, it's interesting to note that many of those dying from substance overdoses are housed and employed. So this is a graph of employment. On the next slide, you can see where the overdoses are occurring, and the majority of them are occurring indoors, actually in a private residence, or less commonly a hotel or a residential facility. And then on the right-hand graph is just some information about the people who are overdosing. And from this slide, the takeaway, I think, is that many of those people have known mental health conditions or a substance use history and have sought treatment recently for substance use disorder. So some points of intervention potentially. Next slide. Actually, my last slide. There was a request for location data related to fatal overdoses. I want to thank Diane Lindquist at the Law and Justice Office for making this heat map. Not something within my skill set yet. But as you can see, the highest concentration of fatal overdoses is in that downtown area, zip codes 99201 and 99204. There's the inset map just kind of expands that area to see the zip codes involved. And then a higher density in the kind of surrounding zip codes of that downtown core. So that is all the data I have to present. Just again wanted to sort of bring that to you guys so that you know what people are interested in.
I was just going to say, Mike and Vina are working on, this was the best data they could have for a heat map today, but sometimes zip codes aren't very useful to show jurisdictional boundaries. So they're working on trying to get to that address level to really make it more readily evident where, by jurisdiction where these are happening.
I think it's very helpful to see it though, to see where predominantly, things are happening. So.
Dr. Singh, any indication on why Spokane County lags? I think I've heard 2 years we lag behind sort of in the trends nationally or statewide, and any indication as to why?
Any indication nothing identifiable to say why. I'm not sure, these drug sort of trends tend to start in the Southeast for whatever reason. I'm not sure if that has to do with trafficking, what's available at the time, and then they tend to come this way. And the same is true of the leveling off of the deaths. It seems to have started more Southeast, East Coast, and kind of moving across the country. So I don't know why, but I do hope it's coming.
Okay. And then I know you mentioned there was a type of testing to determine whether it was synthetic or illicit versus licit, fentanyl. Is there are you able to tell based on sort of the mixture, the compounds, or the chemical makeup on sort of where are there any markers that would give you an indication on where the drug was produced? Like sort of what country, what continent, sort of anything like that?
So that piece probably would be a better question for DEA. I think they do testing. There are, I believe, certain signatures of drugs, like a certain mixture, certain additives that are in the drugs that can be a clue as to where they are coming from. The testing that we do, again, we don't have the budget to do that expanded testing of the blood, the piece that's ours. But those who are testing the drugs, I think, can detect certain trends to at least narrow down a geographic area as to where those drugs are originating.
Okay. Has any of that information been provided to you, just sort of regionally, maybe not specific to Spokane County, but Washington State? Has any of that been provided to you that you could pass along to us?
None has been provided to me, no. And that really, where the drugs are coming from is kind of out of my bailiwick. I mean, we're more interested, of course, in what people are dying of. And for determining that, the origin of the drugs doesn't matter as much. So I guess it's not really I wouldn't expect to have that data, although it would be interesting to have for sure, but not necessary for me.
Great, thank you.
So I guess So I guess just to feed onto that, so when you do have an overdose death, who do you have to report that to? Because do you report that to DEA? Do you report it to the sheriff's office, the police department?
So we report data to a variety of different agencies. So the regional health district, the state health department are the two main ones, also to the CDC because they are tracking these deaths. As far as I'm not sure that there was for a time a data sharing website that was run by law enforcement that we were adding data to. I believe that is no longer active or not currently active. So we don't supply that information directly to law enforcement.
Okay, interesting.
But typically they have received the same death report, and whichever deaths we are going to, they are also there. So they directly get that information. Just we don't do any follow-up reporting as to these drugs were detected in the system, if that makes sense.
Doctor, thanks so much for the presentation. Do you have all this data up on your website, or where? I know you've probably you said lots of media questions about trends. There was that story, the spokesman 2 weekends ago, with some of the data from your office. Do you have a dashboard, or did you just produce these slides just for this presentation?
So, right, it has been kind of inefficient to date because we just produce information in response to queries, but I'm working actually with Mike and Diane to create a dashboard for our website. And then this information in final form will be available in our annual report, which is housed on our website. So each year we put together a snapshot like this, but with certain topics, there is always this kind of, I don't know if it's seasonal or quarterly or whatever interest. So I think it would be much better to have a dashboard that we update at defined intervals so that we're not always kind of trying to respond to these multiple requests.
Another idea would be partnering with the health district and just working with, Diane is amazing at data presentation and analysis here. But anyway, just a thought, they have their data dashboard as well. Maybe they could display some of this and it would be less work on your behalf. So a lot of people probably would go there thinking it's related to health, so just a thought. I know that there was a discussion about the health district looking into presenting some of the just overdose data, not actually overdose related, like death by overdose, but just the number of overdoses happening in the community. So I'm not sure where that conversation is either.
Mike.
I'm just gonna say, we are working on a dashboard with bringing for this part of it. So whatever connectivity we'll work with the health district as well.
Yeah, just to link it so people can find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having some of these data points are just important, and we should be updating them and having them easily accessible by the media so that you're not scrambling because you have other things that you need to do, like investigate these deaths. So thank you, doctor.
It would probably look more like a link. It would link up to the dashboard.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Singh? Well, thank you for reporting to us, because it's like, I think we have been hearing kind of what's been going on in other sources. And so it's just good to get the information and appreciate Mike, you and Diane helping, produce with Dr. Singh the heat map, because I think that's really important for us to see where those deaths are occurring. And I'm gonna want to make sure that law enforcement is seeing that if they're not tracking it, I think they need to be aware, because that shows where things are happening. So thank you. Appreciate all the information. Appreciate nice seeing you. Haven't seen you for a little while. So we look forward to when you come back for your annual report.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Let's see, Vicki has something she needs to get to. So we are going to jump. Ashley, I'm gonna have you and Vicki do item J. Okay. And we'll do that quick.
Yeah, so we're just back. You had asked a couple weeks ago when we gave a workday update on where we were at with processing payments vouchers specifically for the districts. So That is Vicky's shop, and so I think it makes a lot more sense for her to answer any questions that you may have, give an update, and hopefully get you all the information you were asking for.
Okay, so we will take to I and J at this point then, so we could just get both of them out of the way.
Oh, yes, that would be wonderful, yes.
Yes, so,
Okay. So we did go live on Workday. It's been an adventure. And it's continuing, it will continue to be a challenge. And it's an implementation. I mean, what it is. It'll probably take months to 2 years before we get totally settled down on Workday and really are utilizing it in the way that it should be utilized. But for the near term, yes, we are on crisis mode, putting out fires. Not sure we're quite as at the level of LA, but everybody is scrambling and everybody is busy. So one of the many things that we do is we are the service bureau for the districts. We print their checks and that's it. We don't audit, we don't do anything else. And I won't go into the technical details on that, but unfortunately not all the information got loaded. So right now we still don't have addresses to print on the checks. I've got a 12:30 meeting with Guidehouse this afternoon. But hopefully we're gonna finalize the files and get those addresses uploaded. Did we do sufficient communication with the districts? No, we did not, and I'll own that. So we should have done a lot more communication to the districts and provided them with as specific of dates as we possibly can. But we expected to go live on the 17th, but that didn't happen. In part because the addresses for the county vendors weren't accessible in the system. So Rose and crew worked very hard over the weekend so we could at least come up on the 21st so that departments could start entering. So we are now caught up on districts.
so their checks have been printed.
In fact, we've printed more district checks than we've made county payments at this point in time. So we've processed about 500 county payments and we've got a little over 900 county transactions in the queue. So a lot of it is still departments are learning things. We're learning things. We've got a discussion going right now about if we should be using the memo field for description or the item description field for descriptions. Where is that going to show up in reports? So it's a lot of little things like that that can hang up the entire process until we can get an answer. And sometimes it takes minutes, hours, or days to get that. So it's an implementation. It's going to be painful and rocky for a while. But at this point, from my office, we're at least able to get transactions through, print the checks, get the ACH files done and out, get the files to US Bank so they can print those checks. So we are at least functional.
Okay.
Not pretty,
Yeah,
but functional.
thank you. Appreciate all the work. Yeah, he's hearing from some of the districts that it's been a challenge.
And it's gonna be a challenge even more because once we get those records uploaded with the analysis in them, there was a lot of duplicates. The way PeopleSoft worked, the same vendor code was used for a vendor, but with different addresses. So Pape Machinery had 3 different addresses with the same vendor code. Now it's gonna be 3 different vendor codes. And unfortunately, the districts are gonna have to go through all of their systems, their records, and update those codes in order for their payments to go to the right place. Because we think we've already had 2 or 3 go to the wrong address. So it's a challenge.
Vicky, specific to the county payments, if there are particular payments that need to be made that are more urgent in nature, is there a recommended path to go to raise awareness on these? I'm not talking about like open water. I'm talking like contractual things that we have with the state and particularly on our community services team.
If they are really truly urgent payments that have to be made right away, and I mean truly.
Yep.
Then they can contact either me or Tim Duffett. Because right now we are trying to keep Veronica out of that process because she needs to be this week at the end-to-end testing for payroll. This payroll needs to come up smoother than this has come up.
Yeah, I'm aware of one in particular that the state is keeping a close eye on us. They know that we went through an ERP implementation. They understand it. But we're starting to run up against, I'm hearing the contractual deadlines for issuing payments. So I'll make sure that Justin and team and Jeff are looped in and connect with your team to make sure that they're highlighting those particular ones.
Yeah, and we would expect that to be maybe 2 or 3 at the most. But anything that's marked rush or immediate. Right now, we are processing first in, first out, because everybody thinks everything's rushed.
Sure.
So, yeah.
But there's ones that I think we can clearly see that they're not rushes. And we can move them down the line.
That's a little harder than you think. So still trying to learn all the ins and outs of Workday. So, yeah. So, yeah, it's an adventure. I think the software is fantastic. There's a couple little strange things about it, but overall, there's so much potential with the software that we do need everybody to be patient because it's not just my office. Grant's office, Public Works, everybody that owns a work stream is really struggling and putting in a huge amount of hours. So most of us are working weekends, just trying to get things caught up. So we're at.
Need any extra help on the weekends? Quick crash course in entering vouchers and issuing payments.
Are you offering your skill set?
I'm not sure that I have one.
I was just, I'm gonna
Nope,
try to
skip
say this
payments.
as kindly as I can to everybody. We need people who know what they're doing in the area that they're gonna be in, so.
Correct. Yeah. I didn't see any gray there.
So we appreciate the sentiment, but no, we don't have time to teach everybody what they need to do because most everybody is trying to do their regular job and do this implementation, not only the financial implementation, but the payroll implementation at the same time. So folks like Veronica and Shannon and Heather Arnold are stressed beyond what a human being should be asked to do.
We appreciate all the hard work, so. Thank you.
It's an adventure.
So next is the Citizens Commission on Salaries.
Yeah.
So hooray, and thank you to Vicky and her team. We got 5 citizens who are willing to donate their time. So that was actually a pretty difficult task, and I'm thankful for the auditor's office for going through that for us. People are not really willing to volunteer anymore. So we finally just got the 5th one to commit. And then I sent all of you an email last week. We have 3 people returning from our business or personnel community. There's one who reached out to me and let me know she's unable to do her 2nd term based on some personal stuff she's got going on. And so I had requested if you guys had any other names, anyone else to recommend from the business personnel group that could be added. The way that the language is written is technically she did finish her term, so we're not required to replace her. But if you would like to, there is a 4th position that is open. I do need to have that person solidified, named before the 18th, because that's when you guys will get the resolution, putting that committee officially in place with their names. And then we kick it off Wednesday, the 19th at 5:30 p.m. for the first meeting. So I am on vacation next week. So if there is a name, I'd really appreciate it ASAP, so I can hopefully get that locked in. If not, we can move forward with the 3 that you already have, that would come back and complete their terms, or would complete a second term, and then the 5 that are selected by the auditor's office. So I leave it up to you guys to, if you have another name to give me. Currently, we have Nancy Williams, who is returning for a second term from STA, Jeff Martins, who's returning for a second term, and Jerry Gemmel should be returning for a second term. So we no longer have the different categories that we used to have of like labor, legal. It just says personnel or business related. So if you guys had a 4th person, I'd love to get them on board. If not, we're gonna kick it off on the 19th.
What about Rob from the airport?
What about who?
Rob, the CFO.
Yeah, Rob would be a good one, to be on that. From the airport, he's the CFO from the airport. So you might want to reach out to him.
Could one of your admins send me his contact info?
Yeah.
Please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
we'll get it over to you.
Awesome.
So what demographic and or what skill set do you think that person ought to have other than business?
It is helpful if they have any sort of comp understanding. To be fair though, because we have a whole new batch of 5 coming in, I'm gonna have to give probably the 2 or 3 week flash comp 101 understanding. But it is helpful if the other 4 have some, so they can help answer questions and help just fill some of those gaps. So if they have any sort of experience working with compensation with their HR team, understanding how the process kind of works from a market assessment perspective, and understanding of what your work looks like is also helpful, because often we get a lot of questions from the voter group. What do our commissioners do? And we'll have the presentations like we normally do, but it is still helpful to have someone that has an understanding of kind of the county in general, what you all do. But also, you guys have also requested the review and recommendation for assessor, auditor, clerk, and treasurer come out of this group as well. So having a general understanding of those others are helpful also.
Time commitment, an hour, 20 hours.
So it's usually about 2 hours a week, and we do it from 5:30 to 7:30 on the Wednesday night of each week. Because it's a fresh batch, the last time we had a fresh batch, it took them 7 weeks. The second go around, when everybody remembers kind of the 101 and have seen the presentations, then it's usually a 3 week, but this is the longer session, so to speak, because it does take much longer for the teaching portion, and then when we invite people in to present what the different areas of responsibility are.
Okay.
And
I
if
have
we
some
were
other
really
names
savvy
for you.
group, sorry.
I might have some other names for
Okay.
you too.
Perfect. Yeah, if we have a really savvy group, it goes quickly, but it really just does depend on how quickly people understand how general compensation works and how willing they are to get on the same page together.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just let Rob would be good. He
Yeah.
understands all of that and government versus private, all of that. So.
Okay.
Great. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Okay, apologize that we skipped here, but yeah, that takes us back to Ben. Right. Kyle, you're back.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Oh, it's joy. Wet days and crutches. Super safe getting around.
Tracks on the back of the bottom of those things.
No, I have not put cut off some mountain bike tires or something, put them on the bottom of these yet. Be a good idea. Well, good morning. This is a request from the board just to give an update on the Newman Lake Water Quality Improvement Project and where we are at right now. You all know Ben and Derek is our project manager on this, and really does a lot of the Newman Lake.
Yeah, so Derek's gonna run through this. We have just an overview of where we are with schedule, and then some graphic or some pictures that were taken on the site, and no action related to this at this point, but just an update.
Yeah, thank you for your time. So yeah, an update on the ARP funded water quality improvement project. We selected Hallmark Construction, so they've been working on this since about mid-November. Everything is going smoothly. We haven't run into any issues, and we're on schedule. A little background on the timeline. So we got the demolition for the in-lake portion started and completed in mid-November. It's a couple weeks, went smooth. Then they brought in the new oxygen line from the building down to the shoreline. That was also done, or that was done in January, and it's also completed. Then between about December, January, they were working on the demo for the building, getting out the old equipment, piping and electrical. That's all done now. So they have moved on to the installation of the new equipment, new piping, the new electrical. Should be done in February, end of February, in time for the mobilization and installation of the new line diffuser.
And you can let Ron know to.
Oh, here, sorry. Back a little bit. There. Yeah.
Oh, you're not on the demolition.
I was just going through the timeline, yeah.
There we go.
So yeah, on schedule, that'll be done hopefully mid-April. And we're very appreciative of that $300,000 additional award. Because of that, we don't foresee any immediate need for an assessment increase or a loan. All right, Ron. Thank you. So some detailed photos. That's the Spies cone on the barge that they brought over to shore.
That's on the bottom right, and this was kind of an exciting piece, is this thing had been underwater for 30 years, and we've had photos of it, but we weren't sure if it would come up in one piece or kind of the complications of that, and so this is was neat to see it rise up and come out of the underwater in one piece.
Yeah, and without a hitch, truly. The Spies cone, the distribution manifold, a couple 100 feet long pipe, and all of the support pilings came up very easily. You remember it was kind of contentious with those pilings with DNR back in the fall, but no real sediment issues, and they came up, so everyone's happy.
So you didn't have to cut them off.
No, yeah, the vibratory hammer worked. I mean, it was like 45 minutes per pipe. You couldn't even see sediment in the water, so a lot of concerns were skipped there, so it's great. So then they finished all of that. The onshore was the oxygen alum electrical lines, 2 air compressors, and the air sep with their piping. So that's all demoed. All right, next slide, Ron. So the current work is on the installation of all the equipment. That on the photograph there is the air sep, which separates the oxygen from the air before it is sent down through the supply lines to the lake. That is currently being installed. The air compressors should be here in a couple of weeks. And then once those are there, the whole system can be put together, tested before approved, and then approved by the engineers before the installation of the diffuser, which should be early April. I think it will take about 2 weeks. The substantial completion is estimated for the 2nd of May. Which is about a month ahead of what we have in our specs. So everything's going smooth so far, and we're over halfway done. That's it. If there's any questions.
Yeah, no, that's great to know that it went smoothly and better than expected.
Yeah, we're all very pleased.
So it's always a good thing in construction.
Yeah, especially with a lot of unknowns when you're working with old equipment that's been underwater for 30 years. It's high risk in on the unknown world, and glad they were mitigated without issue.
There was one of the pieces in the demo from the underwater stuff that says they did a survey with a drone. They found what they called a mystery frame. It was a piece of something underwater that no one knew what it was. There was concerns that it might be very difficult to remove, and we were able to remove it. And so that was maybe the most excitement of this. What is this mystery frame going to be? And it ended up being a couple pieces of piping that we speculate maybe somebody at some point tried it and it didn't work, and they just left it and never put it on the record drawings, so nobody knew it was there 30 years ago. But trusting those folks in the past for doing a good job, but expecting the challenges that underwater demos. We appreciate the support of the board, and we're available for more questions or plan to do a ribbon cutting of some event, kind of to note when the system goes online. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we have one other item for you this morning. You all know Lindsay, with our solid waste group. And, talking about a sole source contract for disposal.
Ron, is Deb Geiger online? Can you unmute her? Possible? Calling Deb. See her. She is.
Deb is keeping a bug away from us this morning, so she is
very
with
good.
us online.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Great, well, thank you for the time this morning. We are here this morning to ask for your approval and consideration of a sole source contract for disposal with Adams County Regional Landfill. That landfill, this is a side, is owned and operated by WM. It's in Adams County, which is why it's called Adams County Regional Landfill, but it is privately owned and operated. So we would like to move forward with a sole source contract instead of the typical RFP process for a few different reasons. But before we get into those, just to bring you all up to speed, historically, our garbage disposal has been a part of our interlocal agreement with the city of Spokane. So we usually send about half of our garbage to the waste energy, and then about half of it is sent to a landfill. This last year, it was Adams County Regional Landfill. When we amended the interlocal agreement this last year with City of Spokane, we added some new language that allowed us to dictate how much garbage is sent to waste energy, how much we will send to a landfill. We didn't have that control before. And then we also amended some language to allow us to enter into other contracts for waste not incinerated at the waste energy. So there's a number of reasons why we want to do this, and I'm going to punt it to Deb to talk about this distance slide first, because it's probably the most compelling reason why we want to go sole source. Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for not being present. I mean, I'm present, but not physically present. There's some options for us for disposal, but Adams County is by far the closest. If you see, the next closest landfill is Wenatchee, which is also owned by Waste Management. There's Finley Buttes and then Roosevelt. And the transportation costs increase substantially when it comes from Adams County Regional Landfill, and then you look at the next closest, which would be Finley's Buttes, because Wenatchee's Waste Management. So, but we have these great tools that we use the past couple of years for cost analysis, and one of the spreadsheets is transportation. And so I put together a little bit of a calculation, and it showed that increase from Adams County. If you took the transport costs we have modeled for Adams County, and then you add that extra addition onto Finley Buttes, it's a 50% increase in transportation costs for a load of waste. If you look at Roosevelt, it's 100%. And so when it comes to the disposal cost, if we went out for RFP, the disposal cost would have to be greater than 50% lower at any other site. And so it's almost a moot point by the time you do that. If someone was able to give us that low of a disposal cost, we would have that much more, I guess, sustainability and environmental impact on the longer drives. So I think that's about all I have to add on that one.
And next slide, please. So right now, initial conversations with WM have indicated a price around $31.50 per ton for disposal at Adams County. We typically spend, depends on the year, or send about 50 to 70,000 tons to the landfill every year. And so this $31.50 price or about there, it's a savings of about $2 per ton compared to the city's disposal contract with Adams County. The other benefit of going with Adams County through a sole source is that we could choose our transportation provider, and we have one that we're actually really happy with. It's Dietrich. They already won an RFP award for transport this last summer when we were going through all the contracts for transport and disposal of various commodities. The way we structured that transportation contract is on a per haul cost instead of a per ton cost. So what that means is if we can efficiently pack garbage in containers, we pay the same price, whether it's 25 tons or whether it's 30 tons, which then could reap some substantial savings for us. It also puts the responsibility on us to efficiently pack containers with garbage. And I will say, early on, we've only been doing it for a couple months, but we are seeing some more efficiently packed garbage with in-county staff, and just kind of that pride and in being there and being responsible for costs. So all in, we're projecting, and this is a big range, but between efficiently being able to pack containers and then also being able to direct some additional tonnage to a landfill over what we sent last year, we could see savings of 60,000 to upwards of 350,000 a year.
And one of the things that Deb and Lindsay identified early on in this, and both in the negotiations with Dietrich as well as some of the analysis of our container weights, is that when we have more control over our destiny, we have a higher control of being more efficient and recognizing those savings that frankly are just past contractor didn't have a direct incentive to do so. So basically putting the onus on us is a big opportunity for us to recognize some savings.
Next slide. There's also some operational advantages. The first one is it's based on a big if, and it's if the waste energy is rendered too expensive by Climate Commitment Act or various factors, we already have another disposal contract in place. We're not trying to find another disposal contract when everybody knows we're trying to find another disposal contract. The second part is the current county transportation provider, Dietrich, they have containers that are more compatible with our systems. So right now under the city's contract, that transportation provider uses rail cars, and we can fit about 5 tons more of garbage in Dietrich containers than we can in rail cars. Additionally, the rail cars are just not very compatible with our compactor. We've had some damages to the rail cars and then damages to our compactor, and then that relays to operational delays. So our staff are spending more time dealing with unjamming a compactor in a rail car, and we don't have those as often with Dietrich containers. We know that because Dietrich transports waste to the waste energy for us now. So we are getting ready to install a new $3 million compactor in the valley in the next 2 weeks. And so this is also just, it's a little bit of a protectionist view, but if we're going to install a $3 million compactor, why wouldn't we take some precautions to pair it well with equipment that fits it well. Last slide, next slide, please. So initially, here's what we're thinking. If we can do a sole source with WM, be a 10-year disposal contract, 5-year extension options, that range 18 million to 28, it really is dependent upon how much waste is sent. And then it's only disposal, it's not transport. We would amend our existing transport contract. So this would just be disposal only. And then of course, annual price adjustments based on CPI or like. Questions or comments?
Just to confirm, this is the fairly new landfill, right? Sort of within the last couple of years that opened? Is that
They just started accepting waste in Q1 of last year.
okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, as long as we can legally meet the sole source requirements, I don't see, I think that you're really thinking strategically about all the operations and how to keep it as cost effective as possible for the county. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, so the new landfill doesn't have rail access to it.
Not currently, no.
Okay. So the other disposal operation that would rely on rail is what, Rebanco?
It's the Roosevelt landfill.
Okay. All right.
They have the potential to add rail at some point in the future. They would have to install some new line. Some of the rail that went right nearby there was already converted to rails to trails. They would have to install some new line if they found that to be operationally prudent.
Okay.
But you know, it's year 2 of, what is it, 100 some year, 150 year landfill. So see what the future holds. We have all been out and done site tours on it. It's, you know, one of the nice things about it is it is brand new and well built and meeting all the highest and best standards of current regulations. So it's nice to have that addition to our area.
Any other questions? I think, yeah, as long as it meets the requirements, I would say, yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Well, we'll work with purchasing then and try and get a resolution for the February 18th. Consent agenda.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Feel better, Deb.
Thank you.
Okay, then that's gonna take us to John Bolton.
Is he on? Yeah, it's on. I texted him, I didn't know or late. I talked with him this morning. I know he's on the road today, so he might be pulling over. But Heather and I have a couple things we can go over
Okay.
before he gets on.
Just wanted to give you guys an update on the federal funds freeze that information that came out last week. They did rescind the federal funds freeze executive order. There was 2 federal judges that came out and did blocks. So it appears that most of our funds should be flowing through. However, we have 2 funds right now that appear to be at least slowed. We cannot get into our Department of Defense and we cannot get into HUD. So those 2 funding streams at least appear to be slowed, not necessarily blocked. We're not the only ones at this point. There's lots of media going on about people that are still being impeded in getting into their federal funds. So we're watching it. I did provide you guys all with a list of all of our federal awards and potential impacts. Where we're at as of today.
I haven't, with George, have they rescheduled our disaster?
They have not rescheduled the disaster meeting.
We did have a meeting last week. I think it was scheduled the day after the order came out. And with HUD to talk about the 44 million disaster recovery. And that one was canceled yet to be rescheduled. One thing before John gets on, we have the opportunity, as we did with the state GSI agenda, to request an item or 2 to be included on the federal GSI agenda. What I just passed out is the current federal agenda. I wouldn't call it a final draft. I would call it a current draft. We decided we weren't really going to make like a draft agenda we passed out. We really do more 1-pagers when we talk with the congressional offices. So it's more of a working copy than a final. Passing that out just to jog your memory what's on it. We do have about 10 days or so to get any request into GSI, and then it goes through a process. Unless one of you want to go pitch it, usually it's been me doing the 5-minute, this is our request, giving them the details, answering questions. We've always got our top request on the GSI agenda. If we have multiple requests, maybe that can just for, nothing against them, it's just for space, you know, you can't take everything from everybody. So if you guys do have consensus around something to ask for that particular one. Before now.
Reading the paper.
So evidently I'm gonna be in DC the first full week in March. And so if there's any opportunity or if you see a window to where I might be able to advocate for any of these, I'd be more than happy to add that to my schedule. So just throw that out there for your consideration.
And I'll be there the last week of February when I'm at this National Boards of Health meeting. So ditto.
And my overlap both of those. So there
And
you go.
Mary will be there too.
So both of you are there.
So we're all gonna meet in DC. I don't know where you're gonna be.
Yeah.
One overlap.
We're just gonna have our.
Last week of Feb, first week of March.
So yes, so I get there on Thursday.
Because you're there for NACO.
27.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm there for NACO.
For the 27th of February.
Yes, and then I'm there
Okay.
till Saturday. Following
Okay.
week.
We're supposed to go out, I think the 5th and 6th,
4th through the 7th.
4th through the 7th of March. So it'll be that first week in March.
Be there for conference, right?
STA.
STA. 4th through the 7th.
And I've let John know I'll be leaving I'll be there like the 23rd to the 28th.
So any thoughts or ideas? We don't have to request something on the GSI agenda. You know, it's just another opportunity to help something in front of things. You know, anybody can go online and look at last year's agenda there. It's usually a very ecumenical document. It's not controversial stuff. It's more stuff that the community is rallying around together.
Just a follow up then is, so you could look at last year's to see which of these might have been on last year's, is what you're saying. Okay.
It's just the idea of,
right,
you know, kind of, there's usually certainly the transportation, regulation type stuff.
I mean, it would be really good if the expansion to the
Stabilization
justice,
there.
mental health. Yeah, I don't know if we have it fully described accurately here, but I didn't know if that was on last year's. If we had put that together, we might not have for last year's, but that seems like a really, I would think that the business community and education community and everyone would want us to do that expansion and have those sobering beds as a key element of our treatment system here. So anyway, that's just seems like a top priority that we want to have on the GSI agenda.
John's on.
Oh, there we go. John, Mr. Colton, we're talking about the federal agendas, so. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
Hey, John, we're talking through GSI's putting together a federal agenda this year. And if there was anything that we would want to also have on their agenda just to amplify an issue.
Yeah, I mean, the nearest thing is I think we should really have a conversation on our FY26 appropriations request. It would be great if GSI could weigh in and that would just be a part of what they're socializing with the federal delegation. I mean, if you go through the rest of our federal agenda and, you know, supporting housing issues, I guess I'd be interested to know how extensive their list is going to be. Because, I mean, you think of some of the things we have on there, you know, we have some broadband, kind of more technical issues we'd like to see a little bit different under this administration. We've got housing, I mean, you can go down the list. But in terms of specific asks to be
kind of championing. I think that FY26 ask is really what would be most helpful to all of us.
And then John, I don't know if you were on the call when we were talking about that. We're all kind of back in DC, or several of us are back in DC kind of almost at this overlapping times.
Yes.
So Amber, when are you back there?
Well, the 24th to the 28th, that last week. So I've talked to John, and the Thursday, Friday, the 27th, 28th would be when I'm done with the NALBO work. So I gave him a heads up on that.
Okay, so you have that, John?
Yep.
Okay, and then Mr. French?
I'm back there, March 4th through 7th. At this point.
Yep.
And I'm the 28th to the 7th.
Yes.
So
I will be hosting everyone.
We'll just be hanging out.
Yes. No, it'll be great. I think so. In terms of how we're talking about our priorities, I think this would be a really good time for us to start deciding what we want our ask to be. And then Commissioner Waldrop, we can start with that as long as the board is in agreement that is the right time to do so. And then Commissioner French, I have reached out to Senator Cantwell's office. Things are looking good there. I know we have some other issues we want to be discussing. And then Commissioner CUNY, we can do the same thing. If we want to just reiterate our support for our projects. We've got a really good showing, a force of commissioners for the next couple months. And I think we should use this opportunity to, really kind of do some self-promotion. And timing will be perfect. I was in DC the last couple of weeks, and it sounds like an FY25 agreement is a reality. They might even meet the deadline. Of course, this is good for all of us because the money for stabilization center funding is wrapped up in FY25. But to that end, they're going to ramp up the FY26 process shortly after. I believe Senator Murkowski and Senator Merkley have already opened up their portals. So, we should spend some time educating the federal delegation and, putting together materials and doing, the rinse and repeat of what we did last year.
John, are you hearing anything about, other than, securing the border and tariffs, are you hearing anything with regard to other priorities? I know that the president had talked about 1 million new homes, and so housing is going to be a priority. I'm assuming economic development is going to be a priority, and job creation, job retention.
Yep.
Are you hearing anything back there that is starting to emerge as other opportunities for us to maybe take advantage of early on?
So, the big ticket item right now is going to be reconciliation, which is going to deal with immigration. It's going to deal with energy policy, which could be very, very interesting in terms of streamlining, maybe more on the regulatory side. And then the third, of course, is going to be kind of the next iteration of the 2017 Trump tax cuts. But that is going to take a lot of oxygen out of the room, although that's more of a congressional function. So that, along with FY26 appropriations process, in which case, we're going to be looking to spend a lot less money. We've still got the Farm Bill, and those negotiations and cuts to SNAP. I think in this first 120 days, we can only walk and chew gum at the same time. so much. You know, and we still have to get, you know, different, you know, regional elected officials. In terms of prioritization, I think, Commissioner, you're absolutely right. In terms of actual tangibles, you know, that's unclear. I mean, we've got a full deck of priorities, but yeah, I mean, economic development is going to be huge with this administration. It's just what kind of levers are they going to provide to allow us to do what we want to do? Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, it starts to, I'm just looking for windows to start to enter into to leverage Spokane County, similar to what we did when we, you know, brought the build grants to the county for Amazon and for the rail lines. I know that rail is going to be a priority and stuff. And so similar to what we did, 2 years ago or last year with Federal Rail, FRA, you know, we now have some opportunities to do some enhancement to rail, and that's a priority for the state as well. So there might be some windows to where we could facilitate, you know, both alignment from the state, the feds, and the county around rail.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple, I mean, there's a couple things we can talk offline about, you know, as we know, if the bill funding, for instance, FAA, their FY22 bill funding is going to be clawed back if it was not utilized.
Yep.
And I think that's common with multiple programs under DOT, US DOT. So there will definitely be some, you know, finances available for us to do different projects, but it might be a good idea. I mean, FRA specifically, as you know, let's start getting into chairs. I think it'd be a good idea for us to, while we're in DC, maybe start to have some of these conversations. We will have to reauthorize whatever the next version of this, you know, our transportation bill is going to be as bill expires. So, you know, of course, funding levels very, you know, potentially could be less, but at the end of the day, what kind of emphasis are they going to put, you know, on these different infrastructure pieces? And so, yeah, I mean, rail's not to dial into rail, but I mean, that's a, you know, perfect example. So, I mean, a lot to talk about. Probably we don't have the time on this call, but I think you and I are catching up in the next couple of days so we can kind of further tease that out. But at the end of the day, yes.
Okay.
And can I shift gears just really quick and get back to what you're probably all you're really sick of me talking about, FY26 appropriations. So we've had some conversations on what is the green buildings mandate? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So my understanding is this is about $33 million the county is going to have to pony up out of their general fund. And so in looking at, you know, for instance, the boiler, I know some of the commissioners have expressed interest in potentially making this a part of our ask. You know, there's a lot of different ways to communicate the benefits, I think, to both senators. We can talk about, you know, the green energy environmental side. I know Representative Baumgartner would be very interested in just the general, you know, kind of cost savings that we're looking at. But strategically, there is a world, if we couch it correctly, in which we ask each member of our federal delegation for a different piece of the boiler system. So, you know, legitimately taking 3 bites at the apple. And we got 2 or 3 last year. But anything we can do to save money on the general fund spending, I think seems to be like a pretty good idea right now.
You guys like that idea? Your response?
Exactly. Josh, what do you
I,
think?
I guess my biggest question about the Green Building Acts, and I don't know, I mean, Jeff, John, what are your thoughts? I mean, because that is a state-driven mandate, is that going to be attractive to the feds? Are they gonna wanna fund something that is 100% driven by the state? And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they do because of what it is, the topic, but maybe they're not because of why we have to do it. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
I honestly, I don't know if staff or the federal end are going to be up to speed at this even being a state mandate. I don't think we have to even talk about it being a state mandate. I mean, honestly, I don't know if they care. And we just talk about this is a real benefit to the county. And, you know, reiterating some of the environmental, you know, climate change, all the different components of these upgrades. Yeah, I don't think the feds are going to care at all.
When John and I talked, we felt the environmental aspect should be appealing.
Okay.
To senators, if the House keeps the same rules, it would not qualify for a Baumgartner ask for that federal nexus requirement. But we were trying to we were looking for ideas that would benefit the general fund, being where we're headed with revenues and costs. So that was the impetus of this, and we thought there could be something there because of the environmental upgrades that it includes.
Okay. So just to confirm, John, when you said they're not gonna care about that, you mean they're not gonna care that it's a state mandate, not that they're not gonna care about the issue, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they're not going to care it's a state mandate. Again,
okay.
I don't even know if congressional staff will know it's a state mandate.
All right.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it's not a priority of the federal government. So.
Correct.
I think we gotta stick with priorities of the federal government that we can translate here. So.
So I'll love to dictate a list of your ideas.
What do you think, Jeff?
I mean, I think you got a great point about looking at what are things that otherwise we're gonna have to fund out of the general fund. I mean, I think that's looking long-term. I think that's smart to do that, so.
I think with the current administration, there could be some opportunities of additional funding around law enforcement. It would be short-term, and there might be some requirements that we have to keep people who are hired long-term. That's kind of a standard formula, but if we're gonna be looking at hiring those people anyway, it would help us with the short-term general fund cost. Same could be said for prosecutors and defenders. So anything that would help with our staff, which of course is a big chunk of our general fund costs. That's another one that's been discussed. You know, PFAS is certainly something that has the federal nexus. Doesn't help our general fund per se, but it's still something that I think everybody's invested in finding a solution, which takes money. There's also programmatic asks that can be done. We've usually focused on the fiscal.
If I can just throw, I mean, when you talk about, I mean, I'll touch on law enforcement. You had mentioned that. I mean, I would prefer we ask for funding that wouldn't necessarily be individuals, wouldn't be people. You know, I think, you know, when you look at, I see mobile command center, tactical robot bomb, you know, rescue and recovery, a dive vessel.
So we have IT requests.
Yeah, it's like, I think those, that
Systems in there.
part of it, that's sort of the angle I would want to go at. I mean, I for just a few years, we had a former sheriff who for over a decade criticized the board because there were, was it 34 deputy positions that were grant funded. The grant went away. The people went away. And so it was the board's fault for cutting those 34 positions. And so, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily want to get us into that position again. And I mean, with positions that are as important as public safety, I don't think grant funding those positions is wise long-term, because those are positions that when they disappear, the public is not happy when those positions disappear. And when you're, the functionality of the force revolves around those positions, when they disappear, you've got a very visible gap, as far as, as far as, your system goes. And so it's something I think just to keep in mind. So, but some of these, the mobile command center, the tactical robot, the dive vested, those are things that have a life beyond the funding. So.
Well, and in terms of how our federal delegation or committee staff are going to look at these requests, you really need to generally prove something that has longevity, sustainability. And so these just, gap funding, for instance, for people, that's not something I've seen very often. So exactly, it has to be sometimes hard infrastructure or things, that will last for more than a couple of years.
It seems like a dangerous spot to put yourself in, to be reliant on the federal government to pay for your.
Yeah. Can I ask just one quick question, random? Do we have a problem hiring and finding correction officers?
Yes.
Just So one, and I don't know from a funding perspective, but I've talked to other jurisdictions, and if you look at the COPS program and you look at the definition of who we can hire through that, corrections officers is actually the one group, the one vocation that's not included. So we've had some conversations with some of the congressionals about adding that as just a couple words within FY26 appropriations language. So not to go off the rails, but I'm just throwing that out there. When we talk about people, we talk about law enforcement, and these kind of one-off grants that we have to go after anyway, i.e. cops, just something to think about. Anyway.
Our challenge, John, is that's a local, a state, and a national issue. It's generally not the non-availability of funds. It's the level of interest or diminished interest in correction officers' roles, where our recruiting, we would, in years past, we would open some recruiting opportunities for positions. We get 100 applicants, of which we had a pretty decent pool to be able to pull from. And now we're getting a dozen or 10, of which luckily if we get one from it. So the issue is the workforce.
Got it. Okay.
Not necessarily inability to fund it.
Okay. Got it. Okay. That helps.
Thoughts or comments?
So at this point, should I plan on not putting something forward to GSI? You don't have to every year.
I would like to ask for a little bit more time.
Yeah, can you just forward again GSI's?
I will forward that around to all of your offices, yes.
Cause they had a deadline in
Just
that, right?
Yeah, it's, I don't remember off the top of my head, but we have a
Mid-February.
couple of weeks. I want to say 17th or 19th.
Yeah, just to see what's, currently they're looking at, and maybe the previous one. I think it's just. You see a lot of the sheriff stuff, and it's like,
Sheriff stuff has been in the past. Some of our road projects have been in it. Transportation heavy. So we've generally been pretty heavy on infrastructure capital with them. Generally it's a non-controversial good thing for GSI.
I think with the current administration that, it's like the real-time crime center and how we can integrate that into school safety, real-time center, drug trafficking, that could be a good nexus. I don't know, John, you can tell me if I'm wrong. That could be a good nexus with the current administration, what their goals are. I'm just trying to think of what we can do that is going to match the goals of the current administration.
Public safety as a concept is one there's a lot of interest in.
Yeah. And partly we've got to look at how do we fund the real-time crime center in the future? It's, it's equipment and bodies, and we knew we'd have the issue, but we also knew that if we didn't.
Actually, they provided a long-term plan when they applied.
Okay, so.
ARP.
So.
They backed away from it since.
We also knew we needed to get it up and going and just see how successful it was to really know the need and how we could make it viable for our community, which I think we've shown. And so I think looking at how we fund that, if we can use grants to continue to fund it for
So
the
like
future.
an expansion of flock cameras, if there's those one-time
Right.
technology.
Which we just saw today, that is happening. I mean, we have businesses that are wanting to sign up, as businesses are hearing about it, I can say, Max's company did that, they added cameras on their job sites and they're telling people, and so other people are starting to add to it. I mean, I think it's this growing demand that you're not being surveyed. It's just if something happens, the cameras are there available to see what happened.
And do they want to convert more of their cows, not the broadband cows, with their cameras on wheels?
There's businesses that are looking at doing that themselves.
Yeah,
maybe-
private sector is starting to buy in.
That should also.
Because I know, again, Max's is looking at, they have an old Equinox that they want to convert to one that they can have on a job site. And so then it's like, what signage do we have from the sheriff's office that we can put on those that I think we're trying to think through from a legal perspective, what we could do to show that, because it is a deterrent when those are there, people are not doing anything.
Well, I've been in 2 parking lots since I saw them. I always park within the region of it now. I'm like, oh, must be crime happening here. I'm gonna park beside it.
But I just think as we're seeing with the potential tariffs and border crossings that, that's an emphasis is that drug trafficking, which these are helping, the real-time crime center is actually helping to look at that. So that's why I just think that if we can come up with that nexus and help drive.
Call over to the sheriff's department,
Some of
try to get some concrete ideas from them.
So.
Well, the other area that it helps is insurance.
Yes.
And if you've got security on site, the probability of maintaining your insurance is a lot higher than not. So that's the other part of it that's weighing more and more into the. There are a couple other ideas I want to explore offline with you, but one opportunity, the state has prioritized more commercial parking lots on interstates and state highways, and they just funded a 140 semi parking lot at Fort Lewis. And so the state is going to go in and build this huge parking lot because truckers are having difficulty finding places to overnight to stop and rest. So it makes the highways more dangerous. But that might be an opportunity to do something at the state level and the federal level and maybe do something here in Spokane. The state has not adequately funded the program, but if we could get some federal dollars and do something like that here, that might be a way to make at least the I-90 a little bit safer for our local residents and stuff. So that's an opportunity that might resonate back in DC. I don't know, we'll see. But there's some other ideas, but I'll talk about them offline.
Okay, you don't want to share them.
No.
Okay.
No.
So does that help, John?
I mean, it does. It gives, I think what would be great is maybe this week, if possible, Jeff, if you're okay to just start collecting ideas, thoughts from the board. So we've got a, plethora of projects that we can kind of pick from and then have that broader discussion. I can line them up with different accounts to make sure they're things we can fund. I can also cross-reference them with previous projects from the federal delegation has supported. But
I'll check
yeah,
in
go
with
ahead.
Norris to see what IT projects we might have that could have a federal. The ones that he's talked about with me are ones more assessor treasurer. I don't know maybe as much interest, but maybe there's something that would speak more to the federal level. there.
Well, he did have, in that meeting we had with their shop, they did have some of the cyber sort of protection
Cybersecurity updates and
Yeah.
stuff. I think
Yeah.
on those. So I could bring some of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was honestly, I misread the room. I expected you guys to come in with multiple ideas each. So,
Offline.
Offline. Love it.
I will work on a list.
Perfect, but yes.
And-
On the GSI, we do need to all three.
And that's, but some of these you don't want to have a conversation until we vet it.
Yeah.
I do think, I believe the next meeting is gonna be a pretty quick turnaround.
Right.
For GSI, I tried just finding, I wasn't finding,
I thought that I saw February 17th.
See, that's what's in my mind too, is the 17th.
Just popped in my head. I don't know why. I think I saw it in Alicia's.
And
email.
so that is like the day of our next meeting.
Yeah, because I mean, they've got to then start to get it all.
Maybe we could put it on the Monday,
Culminated.
the 16th agenda. I think we have a 16th agenda.
We have a strategic planning.
I don't know yet.
Oh, President's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right,
President's Day.
holiday. So,
We're not working that day.
those of us with workday might.
Should be called work day and night.
I did work the funeral holiday.
And Commissioner CUNY, I would also say on the law enforcement side, rather than, the one-off projects, we can also package some of them together. And, say, Spokane County Public Safety Initiative or something like that, and then
Yeah,
pick
because
two or
that's
three.
the real-time crime center, that with the school safety, because I think it ties into this, the school cameras. But I think we could tie, actually several of those in together. So even, the software integration and for public safety.
Great. Okay. And then Scott, we had talked about, or you had mentioned the EPA distressed communities maps, mirroring the state distressed communities maps when we're looking at, so I think that certainly is something we can submit for an FY26 language change. If that's something the board is interested in. I know that's kind of newer, but in going through and reviewing some things, I think that's certainly a possibility.
And we've talked about having a mirror or accept.
Yes.
Accept. Yep. Accept.
In lieu of.
They don't match today, which creates a challenge when you look for grant opportunities, and funding opportunities.
Well, it was suggested that had to be in proviso language with regard to the grants and stuff, so getting that as part of the topic has got to be important.
That might even be something that would be a GSI. Plus, it's regional, might not be a regional issue, but there's regional interest. And that gives us the start of a path forward.
Okay,
Great.
great.
Well, please reach out with any questions over this next week. Happy to answer whatever I can to just help ease this process. And hopefully we can lock something in and get it approved before Commissioner Waldrop is in DC. I think we should definitely utilize that opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you, John. Appreciate it. And safe travels today.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so then that's gonna take us to, is there any miscellaneous items? In a couple executive sessions?
I do.
Mr. Frank Tracy's hand first.
Yeah, go for it.
So I've been working with 4 data centers to be located out in the West Plains. 3 separate developers, each motivated to do a data center. And today, Governor Ferguson issued an executive order bringing representatives together to evaluate the impact of data centers across the state of Washington. So they are high energy users, but they are also critical to being able to take advantage of AI and other technological advances and stuff. So just want to put this on your radar that this is going to have potentially an impact on Spokane County.
So with the data centers, my understanding though is, yes, they're high users of water and
Electricity. Right,
but not job producers.
right. But they're critical to being able to advance AI and all of those other technological advances that, you know, the future is going to rely on. So you're right, they don't generate a lot of jobs. But they're becoming more and more essential. So I don't know where this is going to go.
And they are across the nation.
Yeah,
But it's,
yeah.
I'm just, you know, there's,
yeah. Positives and negatives.
yes, exactly. Okay, interesting. Josh?
So because we supported the MAC in this budget, they brought forth their Samurai exhibit that actually just opened on Friday. We get another employee night as part of our support for the MAC. The date we are looking at is April 23rd. Doing another employee night, so same kind of setup. Our employees can sign up for a time slot. Usually we have 2 time slots just to kind of help with the flow of individuals coming in. So that is a Wednesday night, April 23rd. It'll be free for all of our employees and their family. And just wanted to kind of throw that out there. It works for their calendar. I think we ran the dates by Ashley. Doesn't seem to be anything on our calendar that's 23rd of April. There was nothing on that date that seemed to stand out as any big red flags. So we sort of tentatively have that booked with them. It works for their schedule. We didn't see anything on any of the county schedules. So Wednesday, April 23rd in the evening for the Samurai exhibit and free for all our employees. So
Will you send a calendar invite out to all the commissioners? So we can put on our- Oh, Ashley.
Yeah, and we'll also do, just like we have the last few years, an event invite. So Ron's wonderful and helps us with that. So obviously we're a few months out, so not quite gonna send it. Usually we send it about a month ahead of time. So in about a month or so, we'll send the all county information and then people can sign up through the evites.
Yeah, no, which would be great, but it'd be great to get on those commissioners' calendars ASAP. So. Pat.
Good morning, and I was just going to recommend that we send a release out about the appointment of the treasurer. We already posted it to social media, but I have the board's approval. I'll just revise what we had done when we made the acting official announcement. The action came after the board had met, so I didn't have approval to send something yesterday, but if the board's desirous of that, I'd be happy to get something out this morning.
I saw it on most news feeds.
I saw Cage.
Yeah.
And-
Last night and this morning.
And I'm not saying right here at this point, but for things like this in the future, I mean, can we give our communications director a little bit of latitude where maybe they don't need to get our permission to send out something like that? And if we appoint somebody to a position, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, that doesn't seem controversial. That doesn't seem
You
like
can be
an issue.
proactive, right? After the appointment, communications director has authority to.
Just seems like something Pat should probably just have the authority to notify
How
the
do we do
media.
that so we don't require all of us to, I mean,
Well, we was kind of anticlimactic to say, hey, yesterday it rained.
Well, and we've seen it out there, like
Yeah.
HQ already has reported. I mean, I don't know if every news network has, but some of them certainly have. And at this point, it's just,
paper online.
I don't know. You're right. Yes, you're right. The spokesman did have that.
Like, doesn't like the.
I think the time for that would be when you're figuring out the format of the interview, the question.
Probably we should have just done it before the,
Yes, before. So when we've got agreement on all those
so I
other
think we just need to
pieces.
be ahead of it.
And
Yeah, Pat, if you can help us, I guess, think of what would be the best way to be proactive about it and just give
Yes.
odds ahead of time.
Yes, will do. The other item I had under miscellaneous is this February spotlight will run on February 15th on KSPS. The host is Commissioner Waldriff. Her guest is Dr. Alicia Thompson, talking public health at SRHD. And then I'll be in touch with your execs for March, April, May. Currently, I have back from May. Then we'll get into the summer months.
Just cut out.
We lost you there, Pat.
Oh, sorry about that. So for March, I have Commissioner Jordan. For April, I have Commissioner CUNY. In May, I have Commissioner French is the next lineup for Spotlight. If anybody wants to change or trade dates, I can work with you. But we will want to get moving on the March one here towards halfway through the month. I know folks got trips and stuff planned. So again, March for Jordan, April for CUNY, May for French is the current next lineup on Spotlight.
Mine's gonna be the Zen and motorcycle riding.
Sounds wonderful.
I'll watch it.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
From HQ, also have the information on the treasurer. Commissioner Curtis mentioned KXOI did, and you guys both mentioned that, spoke with this, so.
Yeah.
Probably not coverage.
So yeah, so Pat, I mean, we can put something out, but I don't know that it's really gonna do any good on the treasurer because it has been covered by all the news channels.
Great. I will work with you all on the next time something like that comes up or another issue I think we can be proactive on. So I've made a note.
Perfect, thank you. I think a lot of them pulled your photos off of the county website or the Facebook post, so.
Yeah.
I think that was a good way to do it and get it out there, yeah.
Social media.
Okay, anything else miscellaneous? If not, then we have 2 executive sessions.
2 executive session items, both pending in potential litigation under RCW 4230-1101I. First one, I would like to take, I think it'd be 10 minutes. Would like the board, CEO, legal counsel, as well as Scott Chesney, Doug Chase, and Jasper Coulter. The second item, the board, CEO, legal counsel, and Devin Kurta. No action in either, 10 minutes and then 25 minutes. For the second one, we also want Jeff McMorris for both.
Just the second one's fine.
Second one, Jeff McMorris.
Okay, so we are gonna go into executive session for 35 minutes. No decisions will be made in executive session.
Correct.
So, or when we come out, so, at the end of the 35 minutes, we'll adjourn for the morning. We'll see everybody back for our 2 o'clock. Thank you all very much.